Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our tonight's webinar, Woodland Photography. From Capture to Print with Simon Baxter. I'm Boris Bergman from Datacolor, and this webinar is presented by Park Cameras and Datacolor to you. Simon and I will be here for about the next hour for a presentation. Afterwards, we go into a question and answer section. The question and answer section is not recorded, while the entire presentation, of course, is recorded, and you will receive a follow-up mail with all the details on the special offers we have for you, and of course, the link to the recording. So first, I'd like to welcome Simon Baxter because he is the one with me tonight, and so have a look here, different photo from him. Simon, it's a pleasure for us having you here tonight.
Thank you, pleasure to be here.
Yeah, if you want, please tell us a little bit about you, and then I will hand you over to be able to share your screen with us to show what you have prepared for us tonight.
Yes, please. Sure. Yeah, well, I live in the northeast of England, just on the very northern edge of the North York Moors National Park. Very fortunate to have some nice woodlands close to home, ones which I discovered about 10 years ago, fell in love with, and I've been passionate about photographing trees ever since. So yeah, looking forward to sharing some of my work and looking at one particular image in more detail this evening.
Okay, perfect. That sounds really interesting. So what I'll do now, I will promote you to be moderator. That means now you can share your screen with us. Please do so. I will check questions, and if there is an interesting question that fits into our presentation and into your workflow, I will interrupt you as we have discussed, and all other questions will be answered at the end of this webinar. We also have prepared a few questions from us, and maybe we should just, if it's okay to you, we should start with the very first one. Is a question about our attendees, how they do shoot, if they shoot in RAW or not. And so that's, these questions are just designed that you can answer them, and that Simon can, at this point, Simon, you can see, if you go open the poll section, you can see the feedback, so that you can also tailor your presentation a little bit to the audience. Okay. And I see about 70%, 75%, and we have a crowded room tonight, have answered. So what I will do, I will close this poll and share the results with you. And you see in here, we have 60%, no, 74%, so almost 3/3 saying, okay, I do shoot in RAW, and only 2% say no, and the others say RAW and JPEG. That's good, thank you. I will close this, and it's your screen now again.
Brilliant, right, great, let's get started. So, first of all, to everyone, thank you very much for being here this evening. Thank you very much to Datacolor and Park Cameras for organizing this and inviting me along, giving me this opportunity to talk about my passion for being in the woods and photographing trees. Now, because of how this webinar has been promoted, Datacolor and Park Cameras have done some great work there. I'm going to assume that there's plenty of people here this evening that aren't familiar with my work. Some of you will already follow me on social media, perhaps seen some of my videos on YouTube. So I think it's going to be of benefit to give a bit more of an introduction for the people that aren't particularly familiar with my sort of history as a woodland photographer. So before we get stuck into discussing some of my workflow, I think it's useful to give you an idea of my background story, as it will help you to understand my passions and motivations in photography and why I love woodlands so much. However, I don't want to dwell on the story I've told many times in more detail, so quite briefly, I've had an interest in photography since a very young age. I've had a variety of film cameras over the years. I still have my gold-coloured plastic Helena camera I bought from Argos in the 80s. Some of you might remember those. It's been a casual interest that I've had many breaks from over the years until a life-changing injury and a series of events since 2012. So I was suffering with chronic pain after a back injury, and my business as a self-employed website developer was failing because I struggled with being sedentary. My partner suggested that a dog would be good for my mental health, so a Labradoodle called Meg joined us in 2014 and literally changed my life. There we go. There she is there, 10 years old now, still a bouncing bundle of joy. So naturally, I reached for my camera again. And after a year or so of photographing Meg in the local landscape, we started to explore woodlands. And the experience was nothing short of profound. I'd spent a lot of money on physiotherapy, but nothing had come as close to making me feel physically and mentally better than immersing myself in quiet woodlands with this kind of burgeoning sense of curiosity and wonder. So I've been passionate about photographing trees ever since. But I think my primary passion is actually just to simply be in the woods, to be transported back to my childhood years of playing in the local forest and letting my imagination run wild. I see my photography as a celebration of everything that woodland means to me. Sometimes the images might be a bit melancholic and moody, but for the most part, uplifting and welcoming. We'll look at an individual image in more detail shortly, but firstly, I think it'd be fun to briefly run through a few portfolio images so you can get a broader feel for how I view and interpret trees. This particular image is called Valley Stories 3. It was made in 2017. Did well for me, won the landscape category in outdoor photographer of the year. An absolute firm favorite. That's printed 40 inches wide and on our living room wall. But I've got a good few to go through here, so let's get them through them quite quickly. The image on the left is potentially one of my best known images, I think. It's called Guardians of the Forest, which was taken in Snowdonia. And the one on the right is called Forest Bathing, named after the Japanese practice of Shinrin-yoku. Now, don't be fooled. Conditions like this are extremely rare, particularly in my local area. And I think what the general message of these images as well, and I think what's helped to make them happen, is the time that I invest getting to know locations and trees, so that when you are presented with these wonderful bursts of sunlight through morning mist and really quite rare conditions, and that's why these conditions are so magical, because they are so rare, but that knowledge of the trees and the locations helps you to really take advantage of that quite special transient moment. And you'll see that, like many photographers, I'm fond of a good standout characterful tree. But I think more than anything, I love groups of trees, seeing interactions and stories. And generally more these days, the more complex the images, the better. These ones are relatively simplistic, although it took a bit of effort to compose the one on the left, which is from Scotland, titled Family Tree, because we can see the different generations of trees through there. Wonderful collection of Scots pines, set against that mountainous backdrop, kind of has a bit of a Mount Fuji feel to it. A very blue image because the shadows were extremely blue, all, you know, soaking up that ambient blue from the sky, and a little bit of grayness from the frost that was just touching the branches and the pine needles as well. And the one on the right hand side, also from Scotland, called a Garvey, named after the river that we can see in the scene. And you know, composition is key for me. It's what I invest most of my time in. So once I'd spotted this composition, it was a case of just waiting and waiting, constantly shooting, as this mist just danced around and the scene transformed, and it was waiting for that perfect moment where we have a degree of separation. So we've got our main standout Scots pine, our main sort of feature tree, and then with even just that little birch tree at the water's edge where the mist just went behind that, separating it from the distance, and we've got some obscurity in the background just to add to that atmosphere and build up some layers. But then I do love, like many photographers, like I said, a real standout character. The image on the left is probably my favorite downy birch in Scotland. Very, very difficult conditions to photograph in. It was during Storm Eunice, and I remember when I was with my friend and we saw these trees, and I said, they just look like pencil sketches on a white canvas. So that's what I've tried to reimagine in the edit as well. It's had very little done actually in the edit. It's just a case of brightening it up a bit, you know, making it a bit more high key. But it was just waiting for that snow to blast across the surface of the heather, which softened the base of the tree, but also obscured some of the trees in the background, so we can really appreciate the sculpture of this wonderful downy birch. And the image on the right is quite recent, but it's actually a new version of an image that I made over 5 years ago. This one's called Krampus, named after the mythical beast that scares the naughty children at Christmas time. I take a lot of inspiration from mythology, folklore, you know, films such as Lord of the Rings. It's great fun to just let your imagination go and think of these scenarios and metaphors when you're actually making the image, because it can really have an impact upon how you compose the shot. So here we've got this lovely characterful pine tree, and the way that it looks menacing and dominating over that tree in the background, really giving those kind of Krampus vibes. And at the same time, the conditions complement the story that I've tried to capture there as well. Those, although carefully composed, they're relatively simplistic. Here we get a little bit more complex, and these are actually kind of woodland images which give me the most satisfaction, because there's quite a lot going on, and they're quite a challenge to make. There's a lot of precision involved and careful consideration to the placement of different elements, and just noticing lots of different things that can contribute towards the image that are beyond the trees themselves. The image on the left is an absolute firm favorite. I've never seen it look like this since, but I just love the way these three trees come together. There's this little whispering going on, this little conversation which meets in the middle, and what's helping to emphasize that is this natural vignette of each opposite valley side. We've got the cool foggy light coming down through the middle as well. That's reflected in the shimmers in the water. Also complementing that is that green fern at the bottom. Even that frond of orange bracken just arching up in the bottom right hand corner, just offering on that little gentle gesture, it really adds something to the image. And these beautiful marcescent leaves just floating through the scene, just helping to soften some of these tree trunks too. Careful consideration as to where branches are positioned to offer this connection and interaction between these trees. This is about as close as you'll get to a rainforest in the northeast of England, a really wonderful location. And slightly more recently, autumn 2022 is the image on the right. Now, I did discuss printing this one in a video quite recently, so check that one out if you haven't seen it already. The image is called Lean on Me. I love this image, and I think the key for me is that as time's gone on, I've moved away from just photographing standout trees and trying to make images which speak for the location themselves, speak for the trees, not just for me. So that when I look at the image, I say, yes, that is what that location is all about, and actually what a lot of our native woodlands are about. And it includes elements that we so often shy away from, like scruffy elements, what we might perceive as imperfections, but are actually crucial to the general life cycle of a woodland. So we've got those dead rowan branches laid in at the bottom. We've got the dead tree at the right-hand side leaning on this oak tree, which is why the image is called Lean on Me. But then lots of other details as well. You should be able to see my nice bright green cursor now. But the way the composition is finished off with this branch in the top left-hand corner, the way that's kind of echoed quite nicely with this twig in the bottom. Even just that twig is important when I was framing the image. Even this branch finishing off there, a little hint of the waterway, this beautiful contrast between the earthy colours in the shadows and the rich autumn colours, all contrasting with the coolness on the opposite valley side, the opposite side of the river, with the grasses and the coolness of the green alder leaves. And then placement of other elements, you know, just this branch here, and this cluster of oak leaves was purposely positioned right in the center of the frame, and I had to get in a really awkward position to make sure that this branch was separated out from the main oak tree as well. And just look at all these lovely little triangles that are popping up here and there. Beautiful shapes that I created, even the little ones there. And they all add to making an image that's more complex, more compelling, and just to allow you to appreciate more of the complexity that our woodlands are about. Now, you've probably got a bit of an idea that, like many, I do love mist and fog. Woodland photography has become incredibly popular in recent years, and lots of people do crave that atmosphere of mist and fog. It creates, it makes things easier, you know, building up layers, hiding some of the more distracting elements in the background, perhaps. But actually, I love being in woodlands and photographing woodlands no matter what the conditions. So the image on the left, strictly speaking, isn't woodland photography, but it is trees, and it is just under very flat, cloudy light, which does wonderful things actually for the color, because we've got these lovely natural pastel colors, and that warmth contrasting with the coolness in the loch and contrasting with the coolness of that very intriguing mountainous backdrop. Purposely excluding the top of the mountain. I love being in Scotland. I love being amongst the mountains, appreciating that drama, looking up at the peaks, but I very rarely include the peaks. I use the mountains to add emphasis to the thing that I really care about, which is the trees. And on the right-hand side, one of my favorite images from autumn 2022 in Scotland, called Ever Watching, because of this eye that we see here, and his quite enviable eyelashes. Lots of mascara going on there, I think. But this was very harsh light, blue skies, harsh light, very windy, very difficult conditions to make nice woodland images in. But I found these trees. I thought they were beautiful shapes, nice connections, nice wiggles in the branches. And I used a polarizing filter, quite rare for me, just to cut through some of that glare. A 3-stop ND filter as well to slow down the shutter speed to around about a second or so, I think. And then it just captured that movement, that energy in those golden leaves, all dashing around. And the same in the grasses as well. We've got this lovely naturally shaded foundation, moving into that lovely tapestry of colour through the grasses, the bog asphodel, the heather, moving towards the contrasting greens and the Scots pines. And then we've got all this gold just rushing around against the cool backdrop, which is the opposite mountainside, soaking up that ambient blue from the sky. Again, without mist and fog, image on the left, blue sky, the sun had just dipped behind distant trees, giving enough warm ambient glow to illuminate that tree in the background, but then giving this natural coolness to the bluebells in the foreground. Fond memories of this image, actually. It was not long after some of the lockdown restrictions were lifted. Completely transformed my attitude and general view in woodland. And I started to see kind of the more destructive elements in terms of deadfall and things like that as real positive things, as things that are part of the necessary life cycle in woodland. That's why this image is called enriching. And on the right, it kind of looks like there's a bit of mist and fog, but it was actually completely clear, quite dull actually. The sun was just going down, well, I say sun, it was mostly cloudy, but it had gone down behind the opposite hillside, giving just the tiniest amount of backlighting on these leaves, contrasting against the cool valley with alder trees and leafless trees, giving the illusion that there's some sort of atmosphere or haze there or dampness, but absolutely not. It was completely clear. And this was composed to balance the color, get a lovely balance of color just floating through the scene. That was the primary consideration in this. The secondary consideration was the beech tree itself. But yes, that was very fond of that one. But an all-time favorite from my very first video in December 2016, going back to anthropomorphizing trees, something that I've done for the past 8 years or so. This is called the dysfunctional family. And I probably love this image more now than I ever have, which is a sure sign that it has to be printed and it has to be on the wall because it's standing the test of time. Just an incredible interaction in the middle. And I think what makes it more special for me now is that it has been destroyed. These trees don't exist anymore, which is a real shame. I just feel fortunate to have been there and observed and witnessed this scene and been able to kind of, you know, keep it as an image and as a print. And going back to that these more kind of glorious celestial type conditions, you know, we saw that really glorious light at the beginning. And the point that I want to make actually here is that when we get wonderful conditions like this, it's so tempting to almost photograph the conditions, but then you potentially end up running around like a headless chicken, taking dozens and dozens of photographs, and you might look at those photographs afterwards and feel a bit disappointed, as if none of them have really captured the essence of what you observed, what you experienced. And I think this particular image is actually a composition that I scouted a couple of months beforehand. And that time that I've invested in scouting meant that I could approach this with calm, despite the wonderful transient conditions, and make something where the lovely, beautiful light is just another component in the composition. It's a key component, but it's not just what the image is about. We can't lose sight of all the other things that are important in composition. So this one's anchored with that shadow area in the bottom right-hand corner, that sprinkling of downy birch leaves settling on the juniper, the way this foreground downy birch just then reaches up, and we've got this lovely flow and gesture towards the light. But then all the trees through the scene are pretty well separated, so we have different avenues for the eye to follow. So we have the beautiful light, but then compositionally, the way everything works together, we're kind of harnessing the light to add emphasis to different parts of the image. So it gives something that's a bit more compelling and something that where the eye can just enjoy different parts of the image as well, rather than just the light. This is called Lothlorien, named after the magical elvish realm in Lord of the Rings. Taken a lot of inspiration from films such as that. This is actually a four-image stitch panorama. Quite difficult to make in Woodland, actually, panoramas. But when you do make them work, they're so rewarding. And I think the key with any panorama is that it's greater than the sum of its parts. And a good way to achieve that is if each part of the image is almost an intriguing image in itself. And then once you put those together, it just makes a very immersive panorama, something where you can enjoy all the different elements, and every single part of the image has an important role to play. I printed this 58 inches wide at an exhibition a couple of years ago, and it was a real joy to see at such a large size. But going a bit more simplistic, these square images, and the key thing when photographing any tree is to say, well, what is making it so special today? Why am I making a photograph of it? And in this case, the crowns of these two trees, we've got a pine on the left, a birch on the right. The crowns were just absolutely stunning. The most incredible, complex, intricate detail that had been created by, well, on the left, it's a combination of both frost and snow. And on the right, it's just hoarfrost. But both created absolutely stunning scenes. And yes, you could photograph the tree in its entirety and it would still look good. But I was so in awe of these crowns that I just had to fill the frame with as much of that as I possibly could, while obviously giving some context as well, so we can instantly see what they are and then just marvel at the branches and the details that are filling the space in the frame. And a similar concept with these, actually. The one on the left, another weeping birch, and you've got all those drapes of birch branches hanging down, balanced with the empty spaces, which made me, it reminded me of falling water, which is why that one's called Cascade. And on the right-hand side, we've got these branches forking in like lightning through these fiery leaves, which is why that one's called Tree Storm. Another, I think, well-known image of mine called Afraid of Time. I have told a story about this tree a few times. There isn't time to tell the story now. I have told it on YouTube, I think, but it's quite spooky. But in composition-wise, it's pretty simple. And that's the key to it, I think, is keeping it simple, because the tree itself does all the talking. The most glorious light coming down, just foggy light through a small opening in the canopy, illuminating this wonderful structure. So yes, a very unique experience it was photographing that. So there were quite a few images there, which I have or do sell as print. So some of you might have seen in my book, Gathering Time. But today I want to look at this image. So let's start with why. Why did it appeal? Why did I compose it as I have? The editing choices that I've made, and why I think it will make a nice print. But actually, just very briefly before we get to that, here's my very first version of roughly the same composition, which is titled Marcescence. If you're familiar with my work, then you may have heard me use the word before, Marcescence. It's the name given to leaves which linger on deciduous trees through the winter, and then they fall in spring. You'll have probably seen them on oak and beech trees, particularly juvenile trees. There's various theories as to why it happens, but nobody really knows for sure. So yes, the marcescent leaves being backlit by the sun is what drew me to this scene, and in particular how that burst of orange contrasts with the deep blue of the valley shade. When I find a composition such as this one that I'm particularly fond of, I tend to revisit it through the seasons and over the years and learn from those observations. So in particular, I was keen to revisit in autumn of the same year, but timing was absolutely crucial to get the right combination of layers of leaves at different stages of their transformation. And it makes all the difference to the separation and depth in the image. Just see how we transition from deep rusty colors in the bracken to the orange in the leaves, to the yellow, then the green, then the yellow of the hazel, and finally the contrasting coolness in the fog. I'm guessing some people might perhaps be initially put off the idea of placing such a dominant trunk quite central to the frame, but that's why the photograph had to be about more than just that tree. Yes, it's got that beautiful cluster of vibrant oak leaves, but just kind of look at the rhythms, if you like, that this tree is conducting. There's many nuanced placements and connections beyond that tree. The strong anchor point of the boulder in the bottom right is subtly repeated through the scene like stepping stones. You can go like this down through the scene. It's subtle, but it's there. Definitely not always needed, but having each tree separated helps here. However, although separated, they are also connected through the branch network, which is what I mean by these nuanced placements of elements. See how these three trees here, they all come up and converge at the same point. Even this one here comes and converges at the same point. Then we can follow these finer branches connecting from here to here to here, all the way across here. We can come down here and then back into this one. We can go along this one and right over here. We can come back from this one along here and then back through here again. Even these connect up here. The whole idea of that, it's something that's subtle, but I do it a lot, and that's inspired by the Wood Wide Web. All those connections and networks and conversations going on underneath the ground, I imagine that above ground. And just thinking of trees as communities, as communicating communities. This fallen branch, you might have noticed, wasn't in the previous version, but I actually quite like that. So yes, there's precision and it's meticulous, but the key is that everything appears organic and kind of delicately controlled rather than contrived. Some people say that we view photographs from left to right, which I don't believe is true at all. This is very much, I would say, a right to left arrangement with a procession of trees traversing the hillside. I think strong composition will help to determine how a viewer's eye will meander a photograph. How we compose should be a result of our connection with the scene before us. It's not about shoehorning preconceived ideas or rules into composition, but having a more empathetic approach and composing in response to what you believe the scene deserves, to speak for the trees. There are many things that I love about Woodland, such as its mystery. There's nothing I like more than to explore Woodland for the very first time with that sense of anticipation and curiosity. By the Woodland's very nature, you can never see very far ahead. There's just too many blooming trees in the way, but that's the best bit, being immersed so that you keep wondering or imagining what's around the next corner. It's that experience that I sometimes like to translate into the photograph, include enough to make the image compelling, but leave people wanting more, to want to follow this procession of trees and keep exploring. Right, okay, that's enough about why I made the photograph. Let's finally take a look at what is actually a fairly flat raw file. Hopefully you can see that now in Lightroom. So it's cropped as a 5:4, which is exactly as I framed it in the field, as you can see there. I don't have a 5:4 crop option in my Sony camera, but I can use a 6:4 grid pattern to be able to visualize that. So I usually start from the edge and then I'll turn more towards the center so that I'm not using the edges of the frame. So it actually works with a 3:2 really, but I didn't want too much of this empty space over here on the left. So the 5:4 works quite well for me. Just bear with me, I've got numerous windows open here. So some of my finished images look strikingly similar to the raw files. Essentially, I want to craft the image in the field to make the editing as quick as possible. Like many, I hate sitting at the desk. So it's a great way to ensure the editing process is swift, is to know exactly why you made the image in the first place. The intent and consideration in the field informs your editing choices, ensuring that they reinforce your intent and reimagine the experience. So first things first, first observations, it's a bit dark, but it was purposely captured a little on the darker side, about minus 0.3 of exposure compensation. And that was so I didn't blow this top edge here, but also making sure that I'm not crushing the blacks as well, so we can get all that detail back out. The foreground is way darker than I remember, so I'd like to rebalance the image in terms of luminosity. Also, I'd say some of the color contrast has been lost overall. It's just a little bit on the warm side, so I'd like to work on that. Overall, though, there isn't much work to do at all. So I always start in the basic panel intuitively, and globally, we only need a few minor adjustments, and then we'll apply some local adjustments just to help manage the emphasis. So, like I said, it was a touch on the warm side, so we're just going to cool it down a bit, and that's going to help to separate some of these colors out, separate the greens from the yellows and the oranges. Otherwise, things can muddy together a little bit. And also, what's going to help subdue the greens is if we just add a tiny bit of magenta. That 0.3 of a stop that we took down in the field, I'm going to reintroduce that actually. I'm going to add about 0.3 there. We have got more control now in Lightroom. I'm not going to reduce the highlights because yes, that will help to tackle this, but I don't want to affect anything else in the image. So what I am going to do is boost the whites and just really get some brightness back into the image. Don't worry about that top left-hand corner. We'll come back to that, and then we'll add a bit of contrast by dropping down the blacks a little bit. Now, when it comes to presence, because I like the feeling, the very relaxing and calming, inviting feeling of Woodland, I like my images, the end result, to be quite soft. I don't like things too sharp. Now, this image was it was taken with a Sony a7R5 with the 24-70 G Master Mark II lens. It's sharp, absolutely no question about it. the image was taken at an aperture of f9. If I zoom in here to 100%, there is tons of detail there. And at f9 as well, we're sharp pretty much right to the back of the image. The only place where we lose a bit of sharpness is down in the foreground, but that doesn't matter at all. So yes, I like a sharp lens. I like to capture all that detail, but the thing is, you spend all this money on a sharp lens, and what do? What do I do? You end up softening the image anyway. Because the thing is, when you've got so much detail in an image like we've got here, things can look a little bit too bitty, a little bit too brittle. So it's not unusual for me to take a bit of clarity down, emphasize that mist a bit more by a bit of negative dehaze. Texture, you've got to be very careful of. If I zoom back in here, drop texture down quite a lot, it looks terrible. It's like it's been taken underwater. But I don't mind just taking it down ever so slightly and then really kind of trying to soften those edges out. But these edges will still print very well indeed. It's starting to get a little bit flatter in some ways, but not to worry, we'll come back to that. I am going to boost the brightness a bit more, target the midtones a little bit more, so just get a bit of luminosity throughout the image. We're really starting to blow this top left-hand corner now, but we're going to deal with that shortly. And color mixer is something that I use quite often. Again, we've got a lovely palette of colors here, so let's work on just separating those out a bit. So we've got some nice oranges. Let's add a bit of extra saturation to those. We've got +20. We'll do the same in the yellows. And to help combat that, because greens are a tricky one, they can sometimes look a bit garish and quite often aren't liked by photographers. So let's desaturate those, and it helps so that we don't have an overall feeling of the image being oversaturated. And I'm actually going to reduce the saturation of aqua. And we've got quite a bit of aqua. So if I bring that back again, you might just subtly see it changing if I do it more extreme. You can see it changing in the background there, that kind of next layer in the scene. There's a lot of aqua in there. So to help these warmer colors stand out, I'm going to about -40-ish is going to help. And because I've introduced a bit of magenta, there is a bit of purple in the image. If you have a look on the opposite valley side here, when I go to bring the saturation of purple down, you can see it's there, and I don't want too much of that, so I'll bring down both the purple and the magenta. And again, to help to emphasize the warmer colors, I'm actually going to bring up the luminance of the aqua and really help that light to bleed through that color, and it's going to add to that ethereal quality, and again helping to emphasize this layering of color that we've got through the image, working on contrasting color rather than contrast through light and dark. So that will do there. Now globally, that is it. Typically down here, I'm not really touching any of these, to be honest. So if I do before and after, a few simple changes, and it's really helped to separate some of those colors and work on some of the, kind of bring back to life some of the qualities that are already inherent in the image. Okay, so what I do tend to like to use is the radial mask. So if I press Shift and M on a PC as a shortcut to give me the radial tool, and I'm quite crude with this. I don't do things with a great deal of precision because I like the effect to gradually transition into the rest of the image. So like I was saying, this area down here in the foreground I felt was a little bit dark. So I'm going to do quite a big radial over that area there. And really kind of boost the whites in that area. And it's really going to lift it. And I think that looks perfectly natural to my eyes, is more akin to what I remember. And then we can take another radial and we can start and deal with this top right-hand corner. There we go. Bring the whites down. And for here, this is where I will bring the highlights down just to get a little bit more detail back. That'll do. And I'm actually just going to, you've got to be careful reducing the whites, because if you go crazy, it just goes grey and mucky and horrible. Whereas if you just bring it down a touch, it's just going to take the edge off. And if I zoom into here, there's some beautiful intricate detail there. If I look to before, see all that detail is there. Because we haven't overexposed it, we've not lost those edges, but because we have it, we can reduce it if we want to. So I've just let the light bleed through a little bit. It's not blown, it just adds to that ethereal quality. So it's all about the feeling in the image more than anything else. There we go, back out again. And I think the bracken down here, because there's lots of detail in there and it looks a little bit dark compared to over here, I'm just going to do a small radial over there, like so, and literally just, go on, reset that. And I'm just going to introduce a bit of exposure so that we can see that detail in the final print. One more radial, I think. This area over on the left-hand side, just catching my eye just a little bit too much. So I'm just going to knock the exposure back just by a small amount, just to take the edge off there. And that's probably fine. What else can we do? I don't think we really need anything else. If we do take a brush, perhaps, shortcut key for that is K on a PC, and we could actually just brush, just see where they've got these really kind of deeper orange rusty leaves. We could just paint in a tiny bit of brightness into those. Not much, but you can see before and after, just gives it a little bit more luminosity for print. We are thinking about print here, not online presentation. Sometimes things are going to get a bit brighter for print, and you might not go quite as far if you just for your kind of social media posts, if you like. So that's it. Some very minor adjustments locally, not a great deal globally, but you can see that there is a huge difference there. So I'll put that full screen. Loading. There we go. So you can see that with a little bit more detail. Now, whenever I make an image, it's always in the hope of printing it, which is why it's imperative that your monitor is displaying accurate color. It feels like a bit of a minefield, actually, when you first attempt color management and printing. But once the basics are set up, then it's pretty straightforward. I mean, to be perfectly clear, I am not particularly interested in the technical aspects of photography. You know, if you ask me about different cameras, I'm pretty clueless, to be honest. I only want to know what I need to know, you know, to get by and achieve what I want to achieve. The rest is kind of based on instinct and simply, does it feel right? After all, a technically perfect photograph is very nice to achieve, but an image born from your understanding and thoughtful engagement with the subject matter is what makes people care about your work. I think today there's no point in me repeating many videos telling you how to calibrate your monitor using a device such as the Datacolor Spider X2, but it is a crucial step to ensure you're working with accurate colors and also making sure that your monitor isn't too bright. But after that, we still need to have color profiles for our printing papers of choice. There's a huge array of papers out there. A key consideration when choosing a paper is deciding which one complements what you're trying to say with the photograph, your style, the image's mood, its subtlety, or its impact. Some images which are high contrast with vivid colors and drama might be suited to glossy paper. Quieter images with muted colors and a timeless feel might look better on a matte paper. But one thing to consider is, I'll just come out of full screen there. Come on, bit of lag. Is that it's worthwhile looking at the image a bit smaller.
Simon.
Yes.
Do we have a few more questions from our side, a few polls. How do you print? And we have been, maybe it's a good time to ask them now so that you get some feedback or to point out if you want. Okay.
Okay. Yes, can do. Yeah.
Okay, I'll do the first one. Question is, how do you print? Your own printer, print service, or both? Can be interesting for us. You see, fast feedback, please.
Yes, yeah. So I print at home. So I'll show a little bit of that now.
Yeah.
And my printing paper.
I share the results. 1 second. So.
Oh, sorry. Right. All right. This is. All right. I thought you were asking me the question. Right.
No. You can see the results right away. And if it's okay, this will bring us to 2 more questions.
Yeah.
That's we can ask if you have problems with the print quality. What type of problems? What kind of problems? Please just and Simon, you can see the voting right away in the poll section live. So because as you come to this point, that will something maybe
interesting,
good and to adjust your presentation a little bit.
Okay, yeah. So actually, the point about it being too dark, that's perfect timing.
I share the results so you can see.
yeah. So just to yes, a key thing, which when you're calibrating your monitor, is that through that process, it's going to, because out of the box, your monitor is going to be too cool and too bright. So part of the calibration process means that it's probably going to warm things up a bit, and it's going to be a lot less brighter. And that is crucial, because if you're looking at an image which is backlit on the monitor and is very bright, that is not representative at all of how it's going to be printed. So it's important not to have your monitor too bright, but also when you're editing. So we tend to look at images on a darker background, a bit like what you see on screen now, which makes the image look brighter than it actually is. So I was going to say, if I change this to a white background, the image instantly looks darker. But it's important to look at your image, if you're printing, on a white background, because it gives you a better visualization of how it's going to look in the final print. Because if you imagine it, you know, with when it's mounted with its white border in the frame. So that's crucial, and it does make a big difference. And what you'll typically find is that if you edit an image with a white border, you'll probably get it spot on for print. But then if you upload it to a mobile device and post it online, it might be just a little bit too bright. So it kind of works both ways. So I typically have a version that I post online, which might be a touch darker, and I'll have a version which I print. So, but yes, zoom out the image, you get lots of space.
Yeah, and you see even more, if I print on, let's say, Canvas today, I have a version for Canvas. And if I want to print the same image, I create another version of that image. If I want to print this tomorrow, let's say on alu-debond or on high gloss or whatever paper, you see, and or like here, regular prints and another photo book and whatever. So that's often a situation where it is worse to have a special adjustment, you say.
Yes.
So that's good. And for all of you, remember from the good old analog time, when you pick up the photos in the store, you went out to the window because you want to see them in real light, because the light condition affects if you see the image is correct or not correct. Therefore, the background is very important, and you will see a lot of professionals that they have their desktop background, not any image from Microsoft or any image from Apple. They have a gray background, maybe a grayscale at the background, so that they have some, you see, information as well. They will never ever have, for example, a red background, because this also, it's not only the brightness, it's also the color that impacts. And it's even more. If you sit in front of your monitor and the monitor is a little bit glossy, and you sit today in a shirt, in a red shirt, and you do it tomorrow in a blue shirt, even the little reflection has a tiny impact. And if, for example, if it's a photo book that costs you a lot of money, your wife will never mention, but you will see the error. And that's the reason why we always say calibrate. Okay, I stopped the results, and now it's a second, and then it's your turn again. Thank you, please.
Okay, thank you. I'll just another quick tip as well. Some of you might have seen me do this on YouTube, but I'm going to press Control and square bracket twice and turn the image upside down. And the whole point of this is to kind of move our natural relationship with recognizable objects, because it's very easy for our brain to process an image of trees. But when we do this, we're now looking at a combination of shapes, color, shadow, and light. And it allows us to be a bit more objective about the balance of things. Is there anything that really stands out as being distracting? Is one part of the image just too bright or too dark? And it's not unusual for me to do a bit of dodging and burning while the image is upside down. I think overall it looks really good. I'd maybe tone this area down ever so slightly. You can see how that has punched out a little bit brighter now, and it's become more obvious now that we're upside down. But overall, I think it actually looks really, really good. So I'll bring it back around, and I'm going to change the screen again, and there we go. So we also have to decide on the whiteness of the paper, the texture when we're printing, the weight of the paper, etc. Here are my three go-to papers. I haven't tried a huge array of different papers. I just started using photo speed papers, and it's worked for me. These are the three that I tend to stick to for the most part. It's natural soft textured bright white with a weight of 315 GSM, platinum cotton 305, and platinum etching 285. All three are matte papers. A matte finish, I think, suits my style. And I think the understated nature allows the image to do the talking. No distracting reflections. All the tiniest details can be fully appreciated. See, I feel calmed by the wood, so I frequently translate that feeling with the images I make. And a matte paper adds to that relaxing appeal. NST Bright White, I typically reserve for winter images, cooler images with blues, etc. With the image that we're looking at today, my gut was telling me that platinum etching 285 was going to be the right paper because it's warm, has a slight texture and rustic feel to it. I don't want something that's heavily textured because the very fine detail can kind of be lost within the paper. So I had previously gone ahead and made a print, but I wasn't happy with the result. All that kind of orange and red in the rusty bracken that forms the foundation of the image was just a bit mushy, kind of lacking separation and detail. I did reach out. I tried to sort of get an answer about this from Photo Speed, but I don't really have anything to share, unfortunately. I don't know why that was the case, but I guess the point is that if something doesn't quite feel right, try another paper as well, because I went ahead and printed it on platinum cotton 305, and the bracken was rendered far better with better depth. Platinum cotton is an even warmer paper because it doesn't have any optical brightening agents in it. It's a naturally white paper which will actually age better. It's fairly smooth surface, so it works well with the complex detail of the image we're printing. So let's quickly just look at Photoshop. And if I go ahead and press Control P to bring up the print dialog, just going to very quickly show you a couple of things here to bear in mind. So I'm using a Canon Pro 1000 printer, and I've been using one of those. I did have a Pro 2100, which was quite a big printer, but I don't have that anymore. I'm just going to go into print settings. Now, things are going to vary for you perhaps, but the thing that I want to point out is that if we go into the main tab here and go to color intensity, it's got to be set to manual. And you go into the options here, go into matching, and make sure none is selected to ensure that the printer isn't going to apply any of its own color management. And then we've got the correct media type selected, high quality print. That all looks good. So we need to make sure that color handling is set to Photoshop manages colors. This is crucial so that we can select our custom ICC profile. So you can see here, these are ICC profiles that have been created for the papers that I'm using. So I've got the Canon and the printer. So I've got the Canon Pro 1000 and I'm going to use Platinum Cotton. Now these profiles are custom profiles. These were created by PhotoSpeed. You can do this yourself at home using the Spider print device. I do have one. I haven't tried it yet, but I will do at some point. But these are old profiles that were made, and it's a case of using some very basic software which PhotoSpeed provided to print out a color chart onto the paper of choice, the Platinum Cotton in this instance, posting that to PhotoSpeed. They scan it, they create a profile, they send it back, and that's going to help massively with getting accurate colors in your prints. They do have generic profiles, lots of papers do, which work pretty well, but not as good as the custom ones. So that combined with the monitor calibration, you should get accurate prints. Now in terms of rendering intent and these options here, just hover over them, see what they say. But what I will say is that I always stick to perceptual and black point compensation ticked. Now, I don't sharpen images for print. I don't need to. The image is sharp already. And like I said before, I don't want to get woodland images which are too sharp and too brittle. And I don't size the image down either for print. I just size it down within the print dialog. It works. We did all the prints like that for our Woodland Sanctuary exhibition in 2022. That's how my friend Joe Cornish does his prints, and he's been doing it for many years, and it works. As you can see, I've reduced the border at the top, given a bit more room at the bottom for signing and numbering. And don't be tempted to print edge to edge. Always give yourself some space. It looks better, and when you give it to the framers, they'll be thankful for having a bit more room to play with. Okay, so let's go back.
Simon, let us ask one more question to the audience.
Yes.
And it's going into that direction. Do you have any worries wasting money on prints due to bad results? It will be interesting to see, because what you have just explained is the most important point. You say when you do print, either do the color management in the printer driver, or if you have your individual profiles, you have to do it in Photoshop. That means, on the other hand, you have to turn off in the printer driver, because otherwise it would be double color management, which is too much. And you will see the result now. There are a lot of people that have indeed their concerns. And one more information, you will see at the end a slide from my end where we have created a so-called Spider ebook. It's free of charge, because color management is a little bit like photography. When you start with photography, you do shoot a lot, and a lot of these images may go into the bin. If you have your experience, the amount that go into the bin is much less compared to the beginning. And it's the same with color management. You have different options. For example, you say perceptual is the selection, but there are in Lightroom 2 and in Photoshop 4 different rendering intents. That is what is defined by the ICC, the International Color Consortium. And there is no yes/no answer, which is the best. It's the best for your individual photo, yes, but for a different photo, a different one could be better. That's the reason why we have created this ebook. It's free of charge. You will see the link later, because it's 6 steps of color management that help you, because worst case, Friday evening, you want to call anybody's support and they have all gone. So you have a weekend to do, but you don't want to waste money. That means it can stop you. Okay, that's it. I'll explain in a second, and
that's valuable actually. So thank you for that, Boris. And I'm sure it'll go into far more detail technically than what I can as well. So that's great. So I'll very briefly finish off by answering the question, which is relevant to what we were just discussing there. Why bother to print in today's digital world? You know, if you're trying to build an audience through social media and make some money from photography, then I'm guessing that selling prints is not going to be your mainstream of income. In fact, selling prints seems to have become increasingly difficult since 2020. That also means that having a profitable exhibition is also tricky, but of course there are exceptions. Is printing worth the effort, expense, and occasional headache? If you can, and you can afford it, then you absolutely should. It's worth investing just like you invest in cameras and lenses. Now, I've mentioned the idea of intent when making and editing your photographs. Books and exhibitions aside, printing feels like the final creative step in that thread. If the start of the thread is the very thing that drives you to set your alarm at 4 a.m. and head out with your camera while everybody else sleeps, then a print which celebrates those experiences, observations, and your imagination actually isn't the end of the thread. I've probably said at many points that it is, but it actually loops back and helps to inspire and inform your future images. And printing heightens your appreciation for color, light, texture, luminosity. You'll start to see images in the field and already be thinking about how it might print. The details that are lost in low resolution social media posts are now suddenly a key feature in the image. And that appreciation encourages you to give quality attention to the details when making the images, giving greater depth and refinement to your work as well. It hit home just how powerful a print can be when Joe Cornish and I held the Woodland Sanctuary exhibition in 2022. When you witness people responding emotionally to your work in a way that you might have been affected when making the image, then you realize that photography must have a life beyond a stream of forgettable posts on social media or be buried in a corruptible hard drive. Even if you never get to share your prints publicly, put them on your wall, live with them, learn from them, and be inspired by them. And finally, I do need to promote my book. It is very important. You know, it's not always easy being a full-time photographer. I do rely upon, you know, fabulous events such as this, but also selling my book and being able to have the opportunity to show my work in a way that it's always been intended. So my book Gathering Time is 90 beautiful photographs across 9 chapters, forward by Joe Cornish. There's an essay by Lucy Jones, about 10,000 words of my own. And if you order this evening, I can ship one out tomorrow for you. And there's a code just for people that are attending this evening. It's Web20 to give you 20% off my book Gathering Time. If you don't already follow me, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook. Please check out my videos on YouTube, where you'll find lots of thoughtful content which gives lots of valuable insights and delves much deeper than just tips and technical advice. I started on there in 2016, so if you don't follow me on there already, then there's plenty to catch up on. But that is it from me. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks again to Datacolor and Park Cameras. So I'll hand you back over to Boris and fire away with any questions as well.
Now we have a few more slides from my end, but I will do it very fast. As I mentioned, you see, we have set up this Spider ebook, so you can read it as a book because 6 chapters. You can see the chapters here, but you can also, as a PDF file, you can use to search for anything. For example, you see, as I mentioned, you have to know some background knowledge. Unfortunately, on color management, you don't do it every day. You do it today, you will do it in a few weeks, a few months ago, and then that gives you time to forget about what you did understand, what you know from today. You see, that's the point I can hardly recommend to go for. It's on the link. You just fill out a little form, you come to the next site, and you can download it. The book is available in English, German, and French version. And if you have questions on Datacolor products, You can get on our website to get additional support. You go on support at the upper right and click on, and there is a support form, a support section, and you can submit a ticket. There's also phone support. In Europe, it's 00800 700 870. That is from UK time. It is 8 to 11 in the morning and 12:30 to 4:30 in the afternoon. Okay, so that's what we have for here. And I will stop now the recording,